People of the internet, the breakup of Joe Rogan and Brendan Schaub is happening right before our eyes, and today we're going to learn all the details in the video by Geek A, the unsurprising breakup of Brendan Schaub and Joe Rogan's friendship. Let's see what happened.
The past 5 years have not been kind to Brendan Schaub. He went from being a relatively well-liked, or at least not flat-out hated, former fighter turned podcast personality who was making a lot more money doing the latter than the former, thanks to his initiation into the ultra-lucrative Rogan sphere by proxy of his co-host and Joe Rogan's longtime friend Bryan Callen. To the punch.
There we go, folks. We can blame everything Brendan Schaub on Bryan Callen. And maybe that's why he sticks around T-Fact, because he knows he's responsible for this giant mess of a human being.
Line of every single joke about being a horrible comedian, with his own personal hate club verging on 170,000 members, and seemingly on the verge of bankruptcy, facing $1 million lawsuit, with most of his former colleagues wanting absolutely nothing to do with him, including the man that exposed him to such a big audience in the first place.
Who is the most hated man on the internet?
His name is Hunter Moore. I don't know.
Brendan Schaub just went like this.
Brendan went from being the most frequent guest on the Joe Rogan Experience to hardly being mentioned by Rogan at all, and not being allowed to perform in his Austin comedy club despite hosting just about every single comedian he's ever been associated with, and being the man responsible for encouraging Schaub to get into comedy in the first place.
People are weird, like that want a headline and you know that they know. Like, you know that you're not really a headliner. Like, what are you talking about?
Oh, why aren't you playing the mothership, Brendan? I don't deserve to be there. And me and Rogan have had this conversation. I'm not there yet.
In this video, I'll break down why Rogan no longer wants Schaub around by highlighting several situations that led to the breakdown of their once very strong relationship. And there's no better place to start than Schaub's failed comedy career. Now this
Wait, before we go on and we watch this video, what do you think is the moment that Joe Rogan said he had enough? A lot of people say it started with Bobby Lee and Kalila situation, and their, spat with Brendan Schaub. But I think it's these legal things. I think Joe Rogan, because he still came on the show after that, so I think these legal things are where Joe Rogan was like, he could say no to the whole comedy performing at the mothership thing, and still be friends. But I think the end of the road, like a good Boys to Men song, was these legal things. Joe Rogan has the money to get wind of things a long time before they happen. And I think Joe Rogan, he could be, we're not going to speculate on that. We're just going to move forward.
This is primarily an MMA channel, so I haven't exactly been following the ever-developing comedy podcast drama, and with the surface-level information I did manage to pick up, I felt like Rogan was being a terrible friend by not supporting Schaub after being the one to tell him to get into comedy. But after doing a bit of research, I've come to realize that he tried his best to steer him in the right direction, teaming up with Bryan Callen to advise him not to release his Showtime comedy special Gringo Papi, which became responsible for most of the abuse Schaub receives regarding his comedy. But Brendan's...
Wait, maybe Bryan Callen and Brendan Schaub should have teamed up and told Joe Rogan not to release his comedy special. Now, looking back on it, you're like, who the hell is Joe Rogan to tell anybody about comedy after that Burn the Boat special? But it seems they all should have told each other to get out of comedy, because none of them deserve to be there. Like, think about the last time you heard somebody go, have you seen that Bryan Callen special? Never in my life. They should all just quit comedy, take the money they have and go to an island.
Simply disregarded his advice, writing him off as a hater who was jealous of how fast his stand-up career was taken off.
Hey, Showtime wants to give a special. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be just like them. I didn't realize.
And I tried to talk him out of it.
You and Rogan did.
I tried to talk him out. We almost got in a physical fight over it.
And then I was like, oh, they're just haters.
Now, Rogan is far from being a talented stand-up comedian himself, but he does love it and has been doing it for over 30 years with 6 specials under his belt at the point that Gringo Papi was being released. So probably felt like a major slap in the face to be dismissed as a hater while he was trying to give genuine advice based on lived experience, and most likely made him feel like Schaub didn't actually respect him as a comedian because he didn't think he was good. And when Joe
Wait, that lived experience that he knew he could tell Brendan Schaub is he's a bad comedian. Joe Rogan knew what it was like to be a bad comedian, to drop terrible specials, and he was warning Brendan of all this. It all makes sense now.
Rogan's own bomb of a special came out on Netflix in 2024 to overwhelming mockery and terrible reviews, along with accusations of him actually repurposing a couple of Schaub's jokes. It was all but confirmed by Brendan's former assistant, Mark Harley.
Brendan behind the scenes, like because Joe has been critical of him in private about his stand-up, he legitimately had a grudge where he's like, he would kind of try to downplay Rogan's comedy, like, people saw your show and said it was like a TED Talk, and like that like helps his ego a lot to think that other people don't like Rogan's stand-up. So like, by doing this, like Brendan would actually watch that video and be like, "Ha, told you!" Like,
yep,
you're trying to criticize me, but you're the one that people don't even like.
Considering how close to his heart Joe holds comedy, it's not too surprising that he began to distance himself from Schaub and never invited him to move to Austin, even though he goes out of his way to invite almost everyone that makes an appearance on his podcast, especially if they're a comic, as he's trying to turn Austin into another stand-up powerhouse like LA and New York. For example, look at the unprompted sales pitch he makes to Bobby Lee, who actually criticized Austin in the past and has absolutely no desire to move there. More on Bobby Lee in a bit, by the way, as he played a pretty big role in what happened between Rogan and Schaub.
It's a great place tax-wise, it's a great place traffic-wise, it's a great place. The most important thing is people-wise. The people here are so friendly. Austin people are great people. They're really nice. They're nice. They're not shitheads. They're not Hollywood people. They're not lost in this fake world of leftist ideology that everybody's trapped in. They're just people. They're just regular people, man. And those people exist outside of these blue bubbles where everyone's gone insane.
Now, despite the fact that Rogan clearly never wanted Schaub to move to Austin, demonstrated by not only never inviting him, but also not allowing him to perform at his comedy club while letting his co-host Brian Callen film a whole special there, Schaub
I would say that LA and also New York, because there's people that are in the Rogan sphere that just refused. I think, especially LA, I think those places have massively benefited from Joe Rogan leaving, because all of the attention was on Austin. And I read an article a while ago how LA had to work harder to redefine itself because, Rogan had the comedy club he would go to there, the Comedy Store. And while he was taking all the attention in Austin, New York and LA were slowly redefining themselves and figuring out what it meant. I mean, specifically LA, to be without Joe Rogan. And they built up. And now those places are being really successful with comedy and doing their own thing and are shaping comedy in their own way. So as much as people would say that are Rogan fans that LA, it's so bad now Rogan's gone. The fact of the matter is it's way better. And the people that didn't get the attention that moved down to Austin, they had to work harder and make their comedy better in New York as well. So I think, good riddance, Joe Rogan. And now Rogan is taking Austin comedy. Could you imagine what it would be like to see a show in the comedy mothership? You'd probably have like a special forces sniper, like training, his scope on you at all times. And then you'd be bored to death. I just could not imagine spending like $300 to go to the mothership and just seeing the worst comedy you've ever seen in your life.
Still decided to move, likely in hopes that being so close would make it too awkward for Joe to not let him back into the Rogan sphere. But not only didn't that work, but the move itself proved to be somewhat of a disaster, with the warehouse he rented out for the studio having a horrible effect on the quality of his podcast, with audible echoes, loud industrial AC, an active railroad right outside of the compound, and timed lights that periodically go out during filming. I didn't have time to look through hours of The Fighter and The Kid episodes to find these moments or even knew where to look in the first place, so shout out to American Redac for the following footage.
This new studio is so huge, it's going to be really echoey for a little bit, but we're going to eventually fix it.
We'll get some sound absorbers.
Furniture.
We have to get stuff going.
What is that noise?
It's AC. It kicks on for a little bit, it'll turn off.
Cool.
Old school. But that's a train?
Yeah, there's a train that goes around.
Oh.
Naturally, making a big, uncomfortable move to a different state and not getting the expected open arm welcome from Joe Rogan put Schaub in a pretty lousy headspace. And he began to wax poetically about how much he misses LA almost immediately, and even threw a not so subtle shot at Rogan himself.
I'm heartbroken about LA. Yeah.
Yeah.
I miss my community, my routine. Oh, do you have so much inflammation from your kettlebell workouts?
Yeah.
Pro athletes, I get it, dude.
Sure.
You working out an hour a day? You think you need a cold tub?
40 minutes.
Even if we put the comedy thing aside, Rogan's friendship with Schaub has caused him nothing but aggravation, like the time he used his name to threaten Bobby Lee when he was tricked into believing that Bobby was running an online hate campaign against him by a fraudulent investigator, which rubbed Joe the wrong way as his relationship with Bobby goes all the way back to the mid-90s.
You were going to expose me to Rogan and all these people, and that I should get a lawyer, and that I mean, this is what you told me. And also, just mind you, it was at a level 10 of rage. It wasn't like a soft-spoken, like, you know,
very aggressive.
Yeah, it was extreme, you know what I mean? Threats.
There's been a lot of drama.
I know a lot of people think Brendan Schaub is terrible, which is accurate. But the worst person in that room is Kalila. You know, I think people have only scratched the surface with Kalila, and I just think Kalila is next level. Like, I don't even know if there's a word to describe her, but I will say she is next level evil, for sure. Conniving, manipulative, all kinds of things.
Drama lately, and one of the things that happened was somehow or another my name got entered into this thing, and I don't want to get into it in too much detail, but I'm like, okay, I must call Bobby. And I called him and I said, listen, I don't know what kind of, I'm just hearing about this nonsense now, but I love you. I would never let anybody talk bad about you. I would never let anybody come on my show and talk bad about you.
Then there was the incident with Ariel Helwani, where Brendan recklessly retold a false account of why Ariel was in bad graces with the UFC, once again dragging Joe's name into the mix.
You know, the reason why the UFC doesn't like Ariel is because he was told backstage that Brock Lesnar was coming back and then there'll be an announcement, and then he went and wrote it up, and you know, he broke that agreement. That never happened. That's
well, let's be honest. A huge voice on a massive podcast put that out there.
Yeah,
and
it's 100% inaccurate. Brendan Schaub is 100% inaccurate. And trust me,
I was actually referring to Joe Rogan, but there you go.
Well, Brendan Schaub gets his cues from Joe Rogan. It's a 5-year-old lie. I responded to Joe Rogan on that day, and for some reason, Brendan is sitting there 5 years later after I've addressed this a gazillion times, saying, look, you know, he made his bed and he has to lie in it. That's not what happened.
And then there...
You see that? A lot of y'all don't attribute anything to Joe Rogan, but Joe Rogan is, you know, the puppet master, and he's doing everything. I think Joe Rogan's distance from Brendan Schaub has to go back. There's some trouble. There's a bunch of stuff about Joe Rogan that might come out in the future. You know, money can buy a lot of ability to hide things, but look at Ariel Helwani just said Brendan Schaub takes his cues from Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, if you're part of the Rogan sphere, you're definitely getting the texts before things happen. You're definitely getting taken out to lunch and being like, look, this is how it is. Now I want you to do this, that, and the other. You know, and it's crazy because I could never imagine like being like that with anybody or being subordinate to somebody. That's just not how I roll. Like, life is too short to let somebody else tell you what to do, especially when a lot of it's not good. And why would you do things that would hurt yourself just to protect another man? I mean, it's not your family. It's not your kid. You know, if someone's done something wrong, what can you do? what can you do? You cover it up. And a lot of those times, those people that ask you to protect them when they do bad things or ask you to cover up for them, they're not there when you're in trouble or when you have to take the fall or whatever for that guy. As you can see with Joe Rogan. Where's Joe Rogan now? You know, his business partner is in that lawsuit, is named in that lawsuit. You know, I bet a lot of the stuff that Brendan Schaub learned how to do in that lawsuit come from Aubrey Marcus. Where's Joe Rogan? Kicked him out of the Rogan sphere. That's how it is. That's why you don't trust people like that, because they won't be the people that stand by your side.
There was the hilarious time where Brendan accidentally started a rumor of Joe cheating on his wife by using him as an example of a bald guy that was, quote, slanging dick in an attempt to give advice to a younger fan of his podcast who was losing his hair.
Listen, I know some bald dudes are slanging dick out there. Look at Dana White, Rogan. That's it. I did not mean Joe Rogan is cheating on his wife. Joe Rogan is one of my closest, dearest friends.
And to add the cherry on top, Brady Bell.
There he is. That's Aubrey and Joe. You know that they founded on a botched study, a study that was absolutely crazy, that it claimed to do this and that, and it wasn't true. Like, On It was completely founded on a lie. There's a really good documentary about it. I did a video on it too, on that documentary. But if you look into On It, it's just crazy. And people say, well, Joe Rogan, he's such a good guy. Go watch that documentary on how they started On It. And you don't think that stuff, floods into other things they do, translates right in to like another business. You don't think they do one thing and the other and they don't do it other. I just don't think Joe Rogan is a very good guy. And I think this image he had up until 2020 and what some people and his fans still think, I think that is covered up. Of course, because of his power and his money, I think that's covered up. But I'm telling you, one day it's going to come out. You can't be a person that does shady stuff and get away with it forever. And I just don't believe Joe Rogan is this man that he claims to be. I think it's all an act, because you see behind the scenes, he's pulling the strings. He's being mean to his friends. He's being mean to other people that come to his club that he doesn't like. There's just too much.
Well, the person currently suing Schaub for fraud and theft was introduced to him by the CEO of On It, Aubrey Marcus, who is a close personal friend of Joe Rogan, which can't be going over well behind the scenes. So with all that in mind, it's not at all surprising that Rogan seems to have abandoned him completely and is actually pretty justifiable. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like the video if you liked it, and if you want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell next to it. And if you want to support the channel further, become a member by hitting join if you're on Android or desktop, or the link in the description if you're on iOS.
Look, Brendan's my boy, but he needs a handler. He needs someone like me around him all the time. What are you gonna do? No. Here's why. And he'll go, yeah, you're right.
Are you shitting me, dude? Handler? And then he wrote me this long thing like, you're right, shouldn't have said that, blah, blah. And he gave me his reason. I went, I know, but you don't need, he goes, you're right, you shouldn't have said that. Like, you're not helping my cause, dude. I'm already fighting a good fight here. You're not helping me. He was like, you're right, won't do it again.
Here's what I think. Joe Rogan, I don't think any of the stupid stuff that Brendan Schaub has done that everybody makes fun of him is something, that Joe Rogan would kick him out of the Rogan sphere. And why I think that is because you have to look at Ari Shaffir. Ari Shaffir has some of the worst allegations, all the way down to things with young people. You have Joey Diaz, that is a criminal and has done very horrible things to women. You have these people that he still keeps around. What I think made Joe Rogan separate himself is the legal stuff and the crimes that Brendan Schaub has committed, allegedly. because Joe Rogan doesn't want to lose it all. Joe Rogan doesn't want to go to prison. Hell, nobody wants to go to prison. And I think that was the final straw for Joe Rogan and why this is all falling apart and the distance is just getting wider and wider and further apart. And I just think at some point, even maybe possibly with this lawsuit, something's going to point back to Joe Rogan, and I think it's all going to unravel. And it'll be a crazy day. Let me know what you think in the comments. Peace.
Don't stand.